All right. Ready to unlock some serious wealth building wisdom.
Let's do it.
Today, we are diving deep into Naval Ravikant's How to Get Rich insights. You brought us his Twitter storm and that awesome podcast appearance. Good choices.
It's some seriously thought-provoking stuff.
Consider this your cheat sheet to absorbing Naval's philosophy.
And believe me, it's a philosophy worth understanding. Naval really flips the script on how we think about wealth. It's not just about that pile of money. It's about building assets that work for you, even while you sleep.
Okay, let's unpack this assets not cash idea. He uses the example of a lumberjack versus a software engineer.
Exactly. The lumberjack works incredibly hard, no question. But their income is directly tied to their physical effort. They stop chopping, the money stops coming in.
Makes sense.
A software engineer, though, can write code once, and it generates income for years to come.
Interesting.
That's leverage, a key concept in Naval's playbook.
I'm seeing why this resonates with so many people. It's about working smarter, not just harder, to create something that has lasting value.
Absolutely. And this is where the internet becomes a game changer.
How so?
Naval argues it's created this incredible space for anyone with a niche obsession to actually build a career around it. Remember his examples about miniature Japanese cooking and Marie Kondo?
Yeah, like who knew those were even things, let alone career paths?
Right. But that's Naval's point. The internet lets individuals with hyper-specific interests connect with a global audience who share their passions. And for you, that means finding your tribe and offering them something unique and valuable.
It's like that quote we pulled out. Escape competition through authenticity. In a world obsessed with copying what works, Naval is saying, be yourself. Find your difference. Own it.
And that authenticity becomes your competitive edge. Because even if your niche seems small, the internet gives you access to a potentially massive audience.
Which leads us to another core principle, the long game. Naval stresses that true wealth, whether it's financial, relationships, even knowledge, is built like compound interest, the snowball effect.
He's a big believer in making choices today that will have a multiplicative impact over time. It's about playing the long game in everything you do.
Makes sense. Like if you're constantly chasing the next quick win, you miss out on the compounding power of consistent effort, right?
Precisely. And that long-term approach is something Naval sees as a big reason for Silicon Valley's success. There's this culture of building lasting relationships, knowing you'll likely work with the same people again and again.
So it's not just about the deal, it's about who you're in the deal with.
Exactly. That long-term mindset fosters trust and encourages collaboration, which ultimately leads to bigger wins for everyone involved.
Right.
And that brings us to another critical point, the people you surround yourself with. Naval emphasizes intelligence, energy, and above all, integrity as non-negotiables.
You know, it's funny you mentioned integrity. He tells the story about a friend who had the opportunity to wipe out his investors, but chose not to because it was the right thing to do. Just hearing that speaks volumes.
It does, doesn't it? That's genuine integrity, and it highlights Naval's belief that the people you work with need to be intrinsically motivated, genuinely passionate about the work. You can't force that.
Totally. And speaking of things you can't force, let's talk about the specific skills Naval believes are essential for building wealth. He breaks it down into 4 key areas: specific knowledge, accountability, leverage, and judgment. Where do we even start with that?
Let's start with specific knowledge. Naval says this is knowledge you can't just pick up in a classroom. It's about finding something you're naturally drawn to your obsession and diving deep.
He talks about how his own mother recognized his business mind when he was just 15. Sometimes our true talents are more obvious to others than they are to ourselves, right?
Exactly. It's about uncovering those natural talents. And once you've identified your specific knowledge, it's about accountability. That means taking ownership, embracing risk, being willing to put your name on the line. Think of people like Kanye, Oprah, Elon Musk. They've built empires by putting themselves out there, for better or worse.
And sometimes that means being willing to fail publicly.
Absolutely. It's about understanding that true growth often comes from stepping outside your comfort zone. It's about having the courage to own your mistakes and learn from them.
So you're saying playing it safe can actually hold you back?
In a way, yes. Especially when it comes to building something new and innovative. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about leverage, which Naval describes as a force multiplier for your judgment. In today's world, we have access to incredible leverage through things like capital, technology, and media.
And he uses his own podcast as a perfect example of that, right?
Exactly. 30 years ago, he points out, sharing your ideas was limited to maybe a lecture hall. But today, thanks to the power of the internet, he can reach millions with just a microphone and a laptop.
Talk about leverage in action. So we've got specific knowledge, we're taking ownership, and we're amplifying our impact with leverage. But where does judgment fit into all of this?
That's where it all comes together. Judgment, as Naval defines it, is about understanding the long-term consequences of your decisions. It's about having the foresight to anticipate the outcome of your actions and make choices that yield the best results over time.
He talks about Warren Buffett as the epitome of good judgment, someone people would trust even if he lost everything. It's about building that reputation for making sound decisions.
Precisely. And that kind of judgment is honed over time. It's about learning from your mistakes, constantly reflecting, and deepening your understanding of how the world works.
So it's not something you can just learn overnight from a book.
Not really. It's more about lived experience and that continuous process of learning and refining your decision-making process. And speaking of learning, Naval is a huge advocate for continuous learning, always expanding your knowledge base.
He's a voracious reader himself, but he emphasizes understanding over speed reading. Right?
Exactly. It's not about how many books you can check off your list. It's about deeply absorbing the information and knowing how to apply it in your own life and work.
He specifically recommends diving into foundational texts on subjects like microeconomics, game theory, psychology, persuasion, ethics, math, and computer science. That's a pretty diverse reading list.
It is, but there's a common thread. These subjects provide a strong mental framework for understanding how the world works, how people behave, and how systems interact. It's about building that foundational knowledge that you can then apply to any field.
He also stresses that doing is faster than watching, emphasizing the importance of hands-on learning and embracing those smaller failures along the way.
Exactly. Reading about game theory can't compare to the experience of playing thousands of games. It's about getting your hands dirty, making those mistakes, and iterating quickly based on real-world feedback.
So it's not just about hitting the books, but about putting that knowledge into practice and seeing what sticks.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another crucial point Naval makes: valuing your time.
He's famously anti-meeting and talks about setting a high personal hourly rate, even if it's just a mental exercise. It's about being intentional with your time and energy, right?
Precisely. It's about recognizing that your time is your most valuable asset, and it's up to you to protect it. He encourages us to ruthlessly eliminate distractions and avoid overcommitting ourselves.
He has this great line, "You should be too busy to do coffee while still keeping an uncluttered calendar." It's about focusing on what truly matters and saying no to everything else.
That's the idea. Now, we've talked about learning, valuing your time, but what about hard work? Surely, Naval, as successful as he is, isn't dismissing the importance of hard work.
That's what I was wondering. You can't build wealth by just sitting around reading books and sipping green tea, can you?
Of course not. Naval is a firm believer in hard work, but he emphasizes that it's most effective when aligned with the right area and the right people.
So it's about working smart and strategically, not just clocking in hours for the sake of it.
Exactly. It's about focusing your energy on the things that truly move the needle and working with individuals who amplify your strengths. And that leads us to another key principle in Naval's framework: becoming the best.
He talks about striving to be number one in your niche, even if it means constantly evolving and refining what you do.
Exactly. It's about becoming so good at what you do that you become the go-to person, the undisputed expert. And that takes time, dedication, and a willingness to always be learning and growing.
Which circles back to authenticity, right? Finding that sweet spot where your passions, skills, and the market's needs all intersect.
Absolutely. It's about owning that unique space where you can excel and then pouring your heart and soul into it. Now, I'm sure some of our listeners are wondering about shortcuts.
Right. Because who doesn't love a good shortcut? There's got to be a faster way to build wealth than all this hard work and long-term thinking, right?
Well, Naval is very clear on this. There are no shortcuts to lasting wealth.
In fact, he cautions against anyone promising a get-rich-quick scheme. They're probably trying to get rich off you, not with you.
Exactly. He has that great line, avoid people who got rich quickly. They're just giving you their winning lottery ticket numbers. It's a great way of saying that real wealth is built on a solid foundation. And that foundation is built with knowledge, skills, relationships, and smart decision-making, not on luck or shortcuts.
So it's about building something sustainable, something with real value.
Exactly. And that requires a discerning eye. Naval cautions against blindly following advice from people who haven't achieved what you aspire to. It's about thinking critically, questioning assumptions, and developing your own framework for making decisions. We've covered so much from specific knowledge to the dangers of get-rich-quick schemes. But there's one more important point I want to touch on. Naval's belief that true wealth goes beyond just money.
That's a refreshing perspective in a world so focused on financial success. What does he say about that?
He emphasizes the importance of health, peace of mind, and strong relationships. Money can solve money problems, he argues, but it won't magically fix everything else in your life.
It's like they say money can't buy happiness, right?
Yeah. Exactly. In fact, Naval suggests that single-mindedly chasing wealth at the expense of everything else can actually lead to unhappiness and a lack of fulfillment. It's about striking a balance.
So how do we find that balance?
It's about recognizing that wealth is a tool that can be used to create a more fulfilling life. But it's not the only tool, and it's certainly not the end goal. It's about investing in your health, nurturing your relationships, and finding joy and purpose outside of work.
It's about creating a life that's rich in experiences, connections, and meaning, not just a bank account.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of Naval's most powerful ideas. Productize yourself. It's such a simple phrase, but it really gets to the heart of his philosophy.
I admit, that one really stuck with me too. It sounds like some kind of marketing jargon at first, but when you think about it, it's really about approaching your life and career with an entrepreneurial mindset.
That's a great way to put it. It's about identifying the unique value you bring to the table and finding ways to package and deliver that value in a way that others will pay for.
It's almost like thinking of yourself as a startup, right? You have your unique strengths, your target audience, and then you create something that fulfills a need.
Precisely. And it's not just about creating a physical product. It could be a specialized skill set, a personal brand, a platform for sharing your knowledge. It's about leveraging your expertise and passions to create something valuable.
It's about taking control of your income and career trajectory rather than relying on someone else to provide it for you.
Exactly. And it ties back to the importance of leverage we talked about earlier. By productizing yourself, you're essentially creating an asset that can generate income even when you're not actively working on it.
That's the beauty of it. It's about building something that has the potential to scale, whether through technology, media, or by building a team.
It's about creating something that can grow beyond the limitations of your own time and energy. And that's where Naval's insights offer such a powerful framework. It's not just about getting rich, it's about understanding the principles of value creation, developing the right skills, and adopting a long-term mindset.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Naval Ravikant's wisdom, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that building wealth and a truly fulfilling life is a journey, not a destination.
Couldn't agree more. It's about constantly learning, adapting, and finding ways to create value in a way that's true to yourself. And remember, the most valuable assets you have are your mind and your time. Invest them wisely.
Naval challenges us to think differently about wealth, work, and our place in the world. He encourages us to embrace what makes us unique, find our niche, and build something meaningful. He reminds us that true wealth encompasses so much more than just money. It's about living a life that's rich in purpose, connection, and fulfillment.
And on that note, this has been a truly insightful deep dive. I think we've all learned a great deal from Naval's wisdom today.
Absolutely. So to our listeners, we hope you found this deep dive valuable. Now go out there, productize yourselves, find those people you can trust, and as always, keep diving.